Spoiler alert, my van likes to eat ECUs. I am on ECU number 4. That's right, and that is not normal. Hey, so if you've been following along, you know that I'm busy refreshing all the seals and whatever I can find in the engine bay of my van to make sure that I sort out once and for all the electrical gremlins that I've been having. My T4 is a right-hand drive 2.5 TDI, which has the notorious routing of the engine loom across and down behind the engine, so it gets broken and baked over time and just basically becomes really problematic, as mine has. You can check out my other videos. I've got a bunch of them about tracing the black and white wire, replacing the black and white wire, testing various components and so on. So I've removed the engine loom. Today I'm going to be installing a new engine wiring loom from a 2.5 AXG model, which seems to have all of the same connections as my 2.5 AJT ACV engine, with the benefit of it being left-hand drive. Why is that a benefit? Well, with the left-hand drive, the engine loom doesn't pass over and behind the engine and get broken and baked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a left-hand drive wiring loom to move my ECU from the left-hand side of the car to the right-hand side of the car, so it has a short trip from the fuse box to the ECU, and then from there down to all the components on the engine. So I'm going to show you how I swap a right-hand drive engine loom for a left-hand drive engine loom. I want to eliminate the right-hand drive wiring loom route over, down the back and across the engine and the gearbox, where it gets baked by the exhaust and the temperature. Now the left-hand drive T4s 2.5 TDIs do not have that issue. On the left-hand drive T4s, the wiring loom comes out of the bulkhead to the ECU down here. On the right-hand drive cars, the wiring loom comes through the bulkhead over here, through the firewall, because the fuse box is down there. It goes across the top of the engine, goes down the back of the engine, past the exhaust manifold, over the top of the gearbox, up here, and then to the ECU point over there. There are many places along this route that the right-hand drive T4 wiring loom gets damaged and baked. It goes through a really nasty curve out of the bulkhead, and then it's forced into kind of like a twisted 90-degree past the brake booster. It then runs over the top of the engine, where it gets nicely hot and baked and brakes a lot over there. It then does a nice twist and turn down the back of the engine past the exhaust manifold, which gets very hot. It then goes across the gearbox through another 90 degree, it then drops down and then comes up. You get the picture. It takes a terrible route to the ECU, and that's why the right-hand drive cars have so many broken wires and baked wire problems. I'm going to run a left-hand drive loom straight from the fuse box through the firewall, and I'm going to put my ECU here on the right-hand side of the car, which means I may or may not have to change the airbox. And then the branch that goes off to the engine will then just run down this side to all of the connectors. First things first, let me show you the new wiring loom that I have. Is my new left-hand drive 2.5 TDI wiring loom that I got from somebody in Germany. These are the fuse box plugs, and these are the engine connectors, and these are the ECU connectors. I discovered that there were some minor differences between the left-hand drive and the right-hand drive looms. There are connectors for the N18 and N75 valve up near the expansion tank, but the wiring harness for the coolant level sender in the expansion tank on the left-hand drive cars is part of the wiper motor harness.
so I had to make up a little loom for the coolant level sensor. Additionally, I had to extend the wiring for the speedo sender and make an extension for the reverse switch. Aside from that, everything else just plugged in as per normal.
This is the red and white cable that powers the fuse box. So I've removed this from the connector that goes into the back of the fuse box, and I will fit this into that same connector on the new loom, because this needs to run across the engine bay from the battery to the fuse box down there, unlike the left-hand drive loom, which is only going to run from inside the fuse box out to there, which is what it does on that side on a left-hand drive car, which means I need to replace that one thick red and white power cable in that loom with this one from my right-hand drive loom. So I'm going to connect this to the battery fuse box over there, and then run this along the firewall at the back, and then down through the firewall into the fuse box area. So this is the battery fuse box, and then this is where this is connecting over here to a 50 amp fuse. That is the only cable that I need to replace or substitute from my right-hand drive loom into my left-hand drive loom. So what I've done is I've put the cable behind the firewall protection over here. This will then go through the main grommet and then down into the fuse box over there. This is the connector which powers the fuse box, and this is the red and white wire that I'm talking about. All of these are the other kinds of connectors that plug into the back of the fuse box. So the one that I have to substitute is this connector over here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it in place in the loom. I'm just going to remove this spade, this male spade, from this blue connector and replace it with the other one. You need to just pry the little catch back with a very thin screwdriver, and that's it. It's out. But first I need to thread this one through the boot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little slit in there and push that through. Just make a little cut in there, pop that in there like that, thread it through. That is the grommet that will fit in the firewall over there. So now I'll just take this connector and slide it into the back. Ba-ba! Done. I now have the correct length of cable to power the fuse box. There is an earth as well over here that I need to find an earth point for. I need to run a nice length of earth cable from here, the ECU earth, over to the battery side. There we go. Heat that up so that it shrinks nice and tight and perfecto mundo. I'm going to put a ring connector on this side. Oh, it fits beautifully. But what I do need to do is connect it to this earth point over here. So I've got a free connector there. Let's get this inserted into the firewall and then plug it into the back of the fuse box. And once that's done, I'll move on to plugging in all the sensors on the actual engine. There we go. Nice, nice, nice. This is the fuse box. Right-hand drive, 2.5 TDI, 2000 model. Earlier ones might be a little bit different. This connector over here is for my cruise control, which I have installed over there in the recess for the choke on some of the 1.9s or 2.4s, earlier models. In the back of the dash, which you obviously can't see, is the hole that I pushed the engine loom through, and it is all kind of bunched up in the back here amongst other bits and pieces. So it is going to require a little bit of untangling to get it all in. And then what I need to do is I need to connect the various things into the open spots on the back of the fuse box, like here where the white plugs go, and then the main power with the red and white cable, that's where that plugs in there. So there you go. So now this is the cluster of wires that I've pushed through from the engine limb. One of these will be for the cruise control, which is there. There'll be a black connector at the back here. Let me just show you that. There it is. That's the cruise control connector, that 4-pin connector. Now the main ones that you need to be concerned about are the twisted pair. Here it is. This twisted pair. That's what sends the signal from the ECU to the dashboard and that. So this twisted pair needs to sit with this twisted pair over here. Lots and lots of these little connectors, and a lot of them actually don't have anywhere to go, at least not on my vehicle. Okay, let's plug that in. There we go, that's in place. It has two little slots that plug goes into. These 3 white ones have got to be plugged into the back there. There's a little prong at the back there which has got to go into a slot, and you've got to line up that first. So there's the first one. Right, so this one, it's got the prong on the left. Right, that goes in there and it's home. And then this is the one that has the blue and white wire, the yellow and black wires, and the black and white wire. And this is the center of these 3 white plugs. I just need to put the little fuse thing in place. Gotta slide that into the slot. Put the fuse box back in place. There we go. Right. This is the new loom. This is my old loom. And this is the speedo connector. Now you can see on my old loom it is twice as long as what's on here. But so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to change these plugs over so that I can use the correct one for my speedo. So I will cut this connector off, cut this loom off, going to the speedo a little bit higher up, and then join them up. And then at the same time I'll be able to transfer this little heat protector over as well. So that is going to be my next little task. Snip snip, join join, bump bump, done. So with the speedo sender, I don't want to tuck it down next to the exhaust manifold. What I want to do is I want to put it through this side, come around this side of the gearbox and then back. So I'm going to feed that down here. And be careful not to get tangled with the gearbox linkage, and just feed it down into the back of the engine there, onto the intermediary shaft where the speed sender is. So this is the intermediary shaft, And up top here is the speedo sender, and then just position that in place. There we go, it's on. This is the exhaust right here, and that's why this needs a heat shield. Job done. Now let's move to the other plugs. The other connector that I found on the left-hand drive loom, up near where the expansion tank N75, N18 valves are, is actually this connector here, which has a black and blue wire and a red and black wire. Now that is for the reverse sensor. This connector on the left-hand drive loom can't reach from where it is now near the expansion tank down to the connector on the top of the gearbox. So I've picked up a couple of these pigtails from autoconnections.co.uk, where I managed to get these two types of connectors, the female and the male. And then what I will be doing is I'm going to be making an extension which I'm going to plug in to this plug on the left-hand drive loom. This is the 2-pin connector that will go in like that. I will then add about half a meter of cable, half a meter of wiring, and then this will plug into the actual sender on top of the gearbox. This is the one for the reverse sender. The reverse sensor is, well, the reverse sender, whatever, is down here. You just can't quite see where it is, but it's down here. See if I can get it. There we go, it's on. I have this single connector, which is the red with black. Now this has got to go down to the starter motor, and as you can see, I've got the same problem as I had with the others with this left-hand drive loom, is that this at its current length is not going to reach down there. So I'm going to need to make an extension for the starter motor. Ta-da! The magic of YouTube. A 5-minute job takes a flick of the fingers. Okay, starter motor connector, spade connector in there, and then this is the female, which has got to go on the starter motor itself. Before I attach this, I'm just going to cover it with some conduit to protect it a little bit from the heat. And that is the starter motor connected now. So what I'm going to do now is make an extension for the coolant level sender, which is in the expansion tank. Now the left-hand drive wiring loom does not have this plug for the coolant level sender. On the left-hand drive cars, from what I've been able to establish from the parts diagrams, is that this coolant level sender plug is actually incorporated in the wiper motor loom. On the right-hand drive cars, this is included in the main engine loom. So this is my old right-hand drive loom, and you can see here, this is where this extension exited from the engine loom. Now this is a 3-pin plug. The other pin, which is currently removed because it's on my old loom, this brown and red wire that is connected in turn to this little oil level sensor, oil level sender plug. Now that plug is on the new left-hand drive loom already, and it also has its own earth wire, which is why I've just disconnected it from here. I don't need this on the left-hand drive loom, but the left-hand drive loom does not have this. So that's what I'm going to do there. and you will see it finished in a moment in true YouTube style. Now of course the other loom that I have is from the coolant level sensor, which is in the expansion tank, and this loom that I've created I'm going to run down the back behind the brake lines over there. So that will go on like so. There we go. Got that through there. But in order to get these wires through the bulkhead over here, I need to remove this blue connector. So we'll use this pin. Shove that down there. There you go, I've got the one out. Okay, I've managed to release it now with this little tiny screwdriver. Whoopsie. And there you go. That is it released now. And then what I'll do is I'm going to tape these two together. And now I'll feed this through the firewall. There you go. That's through into the back of the dashboard now. Right at the back there, you can just see the little lights coming through. That's the hole in the firewall where I've just threaded that cable through. So I can just see it there. These two wires, here we go. So I'm going to put them back into this plug, and then that plug needs to connect to this plug over here, and that goes up to the instrument cluster and tells you whether or not your coolant level is low. And then this dark blue connector is for the EGR flap on the later model cars. Mine does not have that. So this red and brown earth cable that comes from that on the left hand drive loom, I need to move from that dark blue connector to this light blue connector. So when it connects to this blue plug, you can see this blue plug has got 3 wires in it, and I need to match those 3 wires so the correct signals are sent to the dashboard. On the other end of this brown and red wire is this white connector plug. Well, this one here, the male, is the one that's on the loom, and that has a purple and green wire on it. And on the right hand drive loom, it's those pair of wires that plug in here like that, and then this red and brown doesn't run to the dark blue, but it runs to the pale blue. So I need to remove it from this one. These are really playing hard to get. There we go. And then this one has got to go into my blue plug, and it's in. And then we'll just connect those two up, those two there, and it's in. All right. So I've propped the rad and the condenser forward. So I've got the main loom here now. The main engine loom is positioned where I want it. So it runs across the engine bay over here and then down to those plugs that I connected earlier. So now I will start connecting up. So the first bits that need doing: 4-pin temperature sensor, alternator, and 2-pin temperature sensor, and then the long one down there is for the MAF, 4-pin MAF. So that must stay up here. So let's do alternator first. The plug for the alternator is on top of the alternator over there. It's a single wire but a 2-pin plug. I can't explain why. Then we've got the 4-pin temperature sensor, and then the blue 2-pin top at the top. So blue at the top, green at the bottom. I don't think it makes any difference which way around they are, but the green one here is closer to the alternator plug, and they were on the same bit of conduit, so it made sense to do it this way around. Then my MAF sensor, which I'll leave at the top, and now we'll go to the underside of the engine and do the rest from down there. These are the main connectors for the fuel pump and your glow plugs and oil level sensor and fifth injector or needle lift sensor, as well as the N108 valve, which is the start-stop valve on top of the fuel pump, and then you've also got the crank sensor over here as well. Plus you have an earth which goes to the front of the engine just up there. So there's quite a lot that's going on over here in terms of wiring. I'm just feeding the connectors from the ECU down to the front of the engine here now, being careful not to break anything, damage anything, because when I inspected all of these, they were in good condition. This is the 10-pin plug. It carries numerous signals: quantity adjuster, N108 valve, start-stop valve. It carries fuel temperature sensor, which is inside the quantity adjuster. So what I want to do is find the corresponding 10-pin plug over there, plug it in. This little white and green wire, which is for oil pressure sensor, which I've got to be careful with, that's over here on the front of the block. Mine is a brown oil pressure sensor. It's not the oil pressure valve. The oil pressure valve is on the oil pump on the side of the engine. And I've got needle lift, 2-pin glow plug, which is the 5 big thick black wires, and then crank shaft sensor, which is this grey one. There's some catches here that you can put these things into to hold them. So I've got a nice freshly cleaned and excellent condition earth on the front of the engine over there on the plate that I cleaned up, and here is the earth in the loom. Now what I'm going to do is remove that ring from that earth cable over there and put a male spade on it and then connect those up.
A few moments later.
Good stuff. Right, so here is the earth from the engine block up there, not the main earth which is from the battery, but this other earth. And then I've got a second earth that I need to hook up for my air conditioning system. Mine is earthed down here. So what I've got is a little piggyback connector over here. So I will connect these 3 wires together like this. There we go. Nice. Last bit of connecting is the wire for the oil level sensor underneath the sump. Clip that on there like that. Right, now I just need to double check. Have I got everything connected? I've got oil pressure sensor connected. That's the single wire. I've got the 10-pin plug connector connected. I've got the camshaft or engine speed sensor, I think they also call it, that's connected. The needle lift sensor, and I've got earths connected. I've got my air conditioning pump connected and earthed. Engine earth, that's tight. Dare I say I am ready to plug in ECU number 4. Anybody else got a box of ECUs? I have got 3 ECUs because, as I've mentioned before, my van likes to eat ECUs. But hopefully now I have solved that problem with this rewiring and new earths and repaired wires. and new Loom. So this is my new ECU, and I will plug it in before I connect the battery. Just pull that connector out there. One side in, and my large ECU plug. And my new ECU. Right, let's fire this bad boy up. I want to make sure that I've got all the bits and pieces plugged in and connected. So I need to put the air oil separator back on. Mine runs to a catch can, it doesn't run back into the intake system because I don't want my intercooler and everything filling up with oil over time. I've removed the MAF from the airbox. It's just held on by 2 screws. You can see that's the MAF in there. I've given that a good clean with some contact cleaner, not WD-40, contact cleaner, I'm told is much better to use. This is a 4-pin connector, that's it there. So I need to make sure that the ECU is getting all the correct readings from the MAF, which is at the beginning of the intake, and the MAP, which is on the intake that goes actually after the intercooler into the engine. There's my MAF connector. There's the MAF connector. Just going to plug that in to the MAF. There we go. Nicely done. I need to just connect up these pipes here so that the intake system is in place and tightened up just a little bit. I'm not going to do a finished job on it at this stage because I need to reconfigure this intercooler and its pipes.
A few moments later.
I know, crazy isn't it? But it is all connected up. Now of course, before I start the car, I need to connect it to the battery, which has been on charge. So positive first, tighten that down, say a prayer or two in the hopes that this is all going to work, and then negative. No sparks, which is good. The moment of truth is about to happen. Let's do it. The magic. Yes, please. So the left-hand drive Loom has cured all of my electrical gremlins. I have no more faults on VCDS. I have all the lights on the dash. But most importantly, I have a camper van that is now running, and I can get out there and see the world a little bit more and enjoy my VW T4. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, stick around for the next video. Thanks for watching, happy days.